Hi, my name's Jake, and this is my life with ulcerative colitis. Now, you may not have heard of ulcerative colitis, but you might have heard of Crohn's disease. Now, these are both forms of inflammatory bowel disease. There's been some big YouTubers coming out and saying that they have Crohn's disease, such as Mr. Beast and Vicstar from the Sidemen. But I've been dealing with ulcerative colitis, which is slightly different. So ulcerative colitis is when I get ulcers in my gut and they bleed and they get really sore. And the main symptom is you get blood when you go to the bathroom. And so I wanted to share my story of having ulcerative colitis for the past 10 years in the hopes that it lets you feel a bit better about it if you have it yourself, or you can just find out what it's like to live with. So let's get started. How did I find out that I had ulcerative colitis? Well, it goes back to, like I said, blood. So I noticed that I was getting blood when I went to the bathroom. And at the time, I thought that it was just hemorrhoids. So I thought that I'd been maybe going to the toilet too much or pushing too hard and there was blood coming out. I didn't think much of it. But the thing is, it didn't go away. It just kept persisting. And it also makes you feel like you really need to go. It's like suddenly you're like, I've really got to run to the bathroom. So run there, quickly go. And it feels like you might have a stomach bug or something for the first few weeks. You're like, what is going on with me? So I ended up going to the doctor. Now, the doctor turned around and said to me, you're pushing too hard on the toilet. And this was, I'd probably been dealing with it for maybe like a month or so. And I went to the doctor, said, you're pushing too hard. And I said, I'm not pushing at all. Like, I'm not pushing to go to the bathroom. It just comes out. And she's like, nope, you're pushing too hard. So she probably thought I had hemorrhoids at the time as well. But the thing is, when I spoke to that doctor, she had that aura of like, I hate working here. I hate my job. So I really felt like she didn't really want to give me the time of the day, really. She just wanted to give me some medications and tell me to go away. So she prescribed me codeine. Now, one of the side effects of codeine is it bungs you up. It gives you constipation. So I think this is what she was hoping for me. Give me the constipation and then I'd stop going to the bathroom and then maybe I'd just stop complaining. But what really happened was nothing. I took the codeine. I just made my stomach hurt because it's like constipating a little bit. But really, I'm still going to the bathroom and ultimately I'm still bleeding. So I go back to the doctor and she's perplexed. She's like, I don't know what's going on. I'll refer you to the hospital. So that's the gastro and they can take it from there. But the thing is, a referral, that takes time. So I have to just wait around for this referral to come through. And during that time, I'm in my final year of university and I actually get one of my first video jobs. Now, at the time, I was doing this little job and it was for the British Society of Immunology. And like I said, at the time, I do not know what ulcerative colitis is. I have no idea what's going on. To be honest, I thought I had bowel cancer. I just thought, I'm bleeding. What else could it be? I didn't even know about ulcerative colitis. I'd heard of Crohn's, but not ulcerative colitis. So I'm doing this job for the British Society of Immunology, and I'm interviewing these people, and they're talking about medications for ulcerative colitis. And it's all going over my head because I don't know what they're talking about. I don't even know what I have. So it's not, none of it's going in. Weirdly, they're talking about some of the medications that I take today, 10 years later. How strange is that? But anyway, during this, I think we interview about 8 people. And between each interview, I'd film them, and then I'd be like, I've got to book it to the bathroom. I'd run to the bathroom. I'd bleed in the bathroom, come back, carry on interviewing. And this went on for the whole day. And that's sort of where I was at. It would be like 20 times a day, maybe more, running. Things would just pass through me, mostly just blood. It really felt like it was just a bloodletting, to be honest with you. It felt like I'd just run to the bathroom, sit down and let blood come out. But anyway, I just thought it was ironic that I was filming these specialists in immunology and the medications that go along with that. And it just went over my head. And it's just so strange that was my first ever paid video job, was for people talking about medications for inflammatory bowel disease. They would talk about other things too. So anyway, referral finally goes through and I go and get a camera shoved up my butt. So it's a sigmoidoscopy. And what that is the camera goes up to the first bend of your bowel and Apparently it's called the sigmoid bend. Don't get a full colonoscopy. I think it's because it's faster. Maybe it's cheaper. I don't know. Anyway, I get that. And pretty quickly, directly after, they're like, you've got ulcerative colitis. So actually, just before that, when I said I thought it was bowel cancer, I was doing the worst thing you could do, really. I was sitting around and drinking because I thought my life's over. I thought this is it. I'm going to die soon. So why not drink? So I'm drinking alcohol. And just so you know, alcohol, it promotes inflammation. And this was while I was waiting for the referral. And I'm just drinking, I'm being depressed. Being in a flare does make you feel depressed. There's links showing that if your gut's in disrepair, your mind's in disrepair. So I'm just in disrepair, waiting for this referral. I just wanted to throw that in. So jumping back, I've had the referral, I've had the camera. They sit down and they tell me, you've got ulcerative colitis. And the first thing they say to me, there's no cure. So that's great. Love hearing that. So yeah, they tell me there's no cure, but it's very manageable. Okay, it's very manageable. So they give me a medication called mesalazine. And the brand that I was taking for years and years was called Pentasa. So it's these little white granules. It's basically like ibuprofen, but slow release. So it doesn't get absorbed in your stomach, it doesn't dissipate there, and it waits until it gets into the gut, and then it releases. And then supposedly, it's supposed to reduce your inflammation. Now, I was on this medication for, I'd say, about 7 years. So what was that like? Well, so now I'm entering this phase where I'm trying to manage it. And like I said, that's the first medication they gave me. So I'm on that, and it does clear up at first. It goes away, and I kind of forget about this whole thing. My mind's just like, let's lock that away and pretend it didn't happen. So I just get on with my life. I get on with, doing university, which I kind of gave up on, to be honest, because I was going through all this stuff. I think I used that as an excuse because I didn't like the course. But anyway, do the course, done it. But the thing is, this mesalazine doesn't keep me from flaring again. And flaring is a return of symptoms. And we're aiming to be in remission, which is a period of no symptoms whatsoever. So yes, I'm on the mesalazine, symptoms come back. And then they're like, right, so now we're going to give you prednisolone, which is a steroid. And it's not the kind of steroids that you think. It's not muscle building steroids. If you've had any sort of autoimmune condition, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's basically called a corticosteroid. So they give you, when you're stressed, you release something called cortisol. And it's like a stress hormone. And what it does is it suppresses your immune system. Because in the moment of stress, you don't need your immune system. You need to run, fight, whatever it is. That's what you need in that moment. So what they do is they give you, I like to call it pseudo stress. It's fake stress. We're inducing stress with the aim of shutting down the immune system. Because what they think, I know it's all of what they think, but they don't know the cause yet. What they think is your immune system is beating itself up. It's attacking your bowel, or it's attacking my bowel at least. So the aim is to suppress that, and then it will go away for a period of time. Again, the trend is we're always just treating the symptom because we don't know the cause. So anyway, we're treating the symptom with fake stress. And I do some research on prednisolone. I think it's called prednisone in America, but it's the same thing. Corticosteroid. And it sends me a bit loopy. And I think that's because I've read all of this stuff, all of these bad experiences on prednisolone. And I think, oh my God, I do not want to be on this. So as soon as I've been prescribed it, I'm like, right, I'm just going to eat sweet potato. And I think that was my whole plan. I'm just going to eat sweet potatoes. They're good for you. That's what's going in my head. And I'm not going to eat any sugar or anything because I've heard that it makes you gain weight. And I don't want to get fat on prednisolone. So I go on this crazy diet where I'm microwaving sweet potatoes and I'm eating that. And I'm on the prednisolone. And the first day I take it, you have to take 8 pills of this. Take the 8 pills. And to be honest, at first, you're like, I feel great. I feel like I've got all this energy. On day 1, this is. And then I think I just let the idea of it all get to me, and I'm like, I feel crazy. I kept saying, I feel crazy on this. And I've been designated a specialist nurse from the hospital. And I think at the time I had to email. So I email her and I'm like, I don't want this. I don't want to do this. This was like after one day. I said, I hate it. I don't like the side effects. Put me on something else. So they're like, okay, we've got an alternative. It's called budesonide. It's a slightly different type of steroid with less side effects. And I'm like, okay, I'll try that. Get the budesonide. Nothing changes on budesonide. I don't even feel any side effects. I take the whole course of budesonide, which it wasn't a very long course. And basically, I was still bleeding. There's no change. Yes. And at the time, so this went on for quite a while, actually. And I'm out of university and I'm working a job, a part-time job or whatever I was doing. I think at the time I was a cleaner. And I keep having to go to the bathroom, bleed, come back out, which isn't fun. But anyway, this steroid does nothing. So I'm like, what other options are there? Because I don't want to take this oral steroid because as far as I'm concerned, it's sending me crazy. So they're like, okay, we're going to give you an enema. And I'm like, an enema? And they're like, yes. Basically, the idea behind it is we started off with mesalazine. So I'm taking these granules daily. And they're like, so I'm taking 4 grams of it. And they're like, we're going to let you have it 1 gram enema. And you're going to put it up your ass, basically, and hold it in overnight. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. And by the way, I look up and apparently 5 grams of mesalazine is like the max you can take before it becomes sort of toxic. So anyway, I shoved out my arse, go to sleep. And I actually noticed that quite quickly, my symptoms are going away. So this was the new course of action. I would take mesalazine enemas, take mesalazine orally, and that was going to try and keep me healthy. But the thing is, it didn't really stop me from flaring. I don't think it ever took me to remission. It just alleviated some of my symptoms temporarily. And this is where I want to touch upon just living in this state between not really full remission and not full flare. Well, I don't know if it is a full flare. I am still flaring, so I'm still getting blood and that, cramping. But the thing is, I've got these other things going on. So I'm letting anger sort of fuel me, which isn't good. We'll get into that. And I'm not looking after my diet. My diet is crap at this point. And at the time, I'm eating takeaway all the time. I'm getting like one night's Indian, one night's Chinese, one night's pizza, then it's back to Indian. Chinese is such a waste of money. But anyway, the main point is the diet was terrible. And I'd be going out and say, I really love skateboarding at the time. And I'd go out skateboarding and I got very perfectionist over it. And if I didn't do a kickflip perfectly, I'd get livid and I'd start swearing, throwing my skateboard around, getting very angry, like so angry I get a headache. And then I'd get picked up to go home. And I'd just be like, why did I do that? I've got a headache from being angry. That's not good for me. And then I get home and I'd bleed. You know, it's like very quick. You had that moment of stress. Immediately my body's like, well, you've pissed us off. It's time to bleed. Not quite what, it doesn't really work like that. But that's how it felt to me. It felt like there was the stress, an immediate reaction from my body. And I kept telling myself, I've got to calm down. This is like not good for me. And I didn't really look into my diet properly either. So this just keeps me in this limbo state. I'm going between flaring, not flaring so much. It just continues for quite a long time, to be honest. Years. This goes on for years. And then they're like, okay, I talk to my specialist. I'm phoning or emailing every 3 months saying I'm bleeding again. And they're like, okay. And then it got to a point where I'd be like, dear specialist, I'm bleeding again. I've ordered myself the mesalazine enemas. I'm treating it. And I felt like I had it under control. And they're like, okay, so we're going to give you a new medication. It is the steroid, but it's an enema. There's way less side effects, and we're going to try that now. I'm like, okay, if there's way less side effects, I'll give it a go. But it is the prednisolone, but just up your butt. So I've got this, and I just want to talk a little bit about the enemas. So the mesalazine enemas, I was kind of using 2 enemas at the same time at this point. And that's a whole palaver, like trying to put this nozzle up your butt. But anyway, the mesalazine enemas, I think they came from a company that invested a bit more money into the equipment. And what I mean is, like, the nozzle was nice and soft. It came like pre-lubricated, so it was easy to slip up there. And I was getting quite good at slipping it up there. And then this corticosteroid enema, it felt like it was on the cheap economy end, and it was this really hard plastic, and it really hurt trying to put it in. It really hurt. So what I actually had to do was I had to buy a bottle of lube just to lube up these hard nozzles so I could put them up my arse and it not really hurt. Because it would feel like imagine you're all inflamed inside as it is, and then you get this hard plastic nozzle and you got to try and put it up there. It wasn't a good time. So I'm lubing them up myself, and that enables it to go up. But the mesalazine is a foam. Sits quite easily in there. Once it's in there, after a couple minutes of discomfort, you kind of forget it's there. But the prednisolone, it was like a liquid. And once it's in there, it was like half an hour of lying there. Did not feel good. Anyway, so I start taking these, and I think it does work. I think it does. But it does feel horrible. I'd wake up at like 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. I've got to let the enema out, obviously, because my body's like, right, get rid of this. It's been inside of us for too long. Sometimes with the foam enema, with the mesalazine, there'd be times where I'd have my whole 8 hours sleep and it's in there. And I think that's when it's its most effective. But the prednisolone, a lot harder. But again, it's kind of like, it just kept me in this state between flaring and not really ever being in remission. So I'm just living in this state, really. Nothing's really helping too much. It's not making me heal. It's not doing anything. And I'm still at this time, I'm probably still having a bad diet as well. And I'm still letting anger get the best of me. And I won't lie, when this literally goes on for 7 years straight, maybe longer, it goes on for this length of time, I never truly get into remission. So I just want to touch upon what was it like actually talking about it to people and the people around me, my family, workplace. So at this time, I was a cleaner in a school, and I'd applied for that. It asks you on the application, do you have any disabilities? And I'm like, I've got ulcerative colitis. And then they're like, how do you manage it? And I'm like, I might just need to go to the bathroom more frequently. So I've got this plan in place. And it is as simple as that. They were very understanding. If I've got to go to the bathroom, I've got to go. And if I've got to lie on the floor because I'm cramping, got to lie on the floor because I'm cramping. And the thing is, I've always been very open about it. As you can probably tell, because I'm telling you about everything. So it came quite naturally to just tell people about it. You're quite open. And my advice, if you're getting a job, just tell them, because there's no point hiding it. Because if you want to hide that you've got this, it's going to rear its ugly head and tell everyone for you. And what I mean by that is, if you're in the workplace and you haven't told anyone, and suddenly you're flaring, it's going to become really obvious, because you're going to, 1, be in lots of pain, 2, you're going to have to run to the bathroom. They're going to be like, what are you doing? Why are you having so many toilet breaks? And 3, you might just have to lie down and curl up into a ball and be in pain. And that's okay, but then they're going to be like, why the hell are you doing this? So your best bet is to actually just tell everyone. And it's not like you need to, you meet someone new and you're like, hello, I've got inflammatory bowel disease. No, not like that. But if you're applying for a job, tell your manager, tell them when you're applying for the job. Or if you're already at a job, tell your manager or whoever's your boss or your teammates, just so they know what to expect. Because otherwise it's just going to be this weird surprise. So I found being the open, honest approach just works the best, especially with telling people around me. They're just like, okay, yeah, that's what it is. And there's no like weird judgments or anything. Well, at least I didn't feel like that. That's just the way it is. But you do get some people being like, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Like unsolicited advice. And a lot of the time it's actually quite annoying because you have tried all these things and you know they don't work. And it's not like my diet was so bad. I was only eating takeaway this whole 7 years. I did go through, now I eat very clean. And I've learned a lot about nutrition through having bowel disease. So, I did tidy up my diet. So, but then people come up to you and be like, have you tried just eating this or this like weird natural remedy? And you're like, that doesn't work. This doesn't work. It just gets annoying. But, they're just trying to help you. So it's not like I'll snap at them, but it's not something I enjoy really. Like now, if someone comes up to me with unsolicited advice, I just let it go through me because it's, I know it's probably, they just want the best for me, but it's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for your advice because you just don't know what it's like. And a lot of people think that it's IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And it's kind of annoying. They mix it up. It's not their fault because they don't know. But it's just not the same thing. So let's talk a little bit about mental health and mindset when it comes to inflammatory bowel disease. So a lot of the time when I'd see blood in the bathroom, it's very like, at first it's like, it's shocking. You're like, wow, there's so much blood. It can look really gory. It's like literally like a battle scene when you look in the bathroom. Like the bowl is red. It looks like someone has knifed you and you're bleeding everywhere. It looks like there's a lot. And my specialist nurse always says it looks like more than there really is. And they are onto something with that. But it doesn't help when you go to the bathroom, you look down between your legs and you're like, oh my God, that just came out of me. Every time it's like, it's kind of uneasy. I mean, you get kind of used to seeing it so often, but still, when you actually stop and look at it, you're like, oh my God. And I've got that, just talking about it now, I've got this feeling of like, it's almost like dread. I feel my face go strange. I'm just like, how does this happen? It's like a big weight. And then say you enter a state of less symptoms, you're not bleeding for a bit, and then it happens and you look down and you're like, not again. Not again. I can't be dealing with this again. And to be honest, even now, while I'm not flaring, touch wood, I look at the toilet paper and it fills me with fear because I'll have like a bit of an off bowel movement and I'll look at the toilet paper and I'll be like, please don't be red. Please don't be red. And I'll be like, oh, thank God. Like, it looks healthy right now. But it's like this trauma that's been induced in me from seeing it before and the years of looking down and like thinking, oh my God. Because it does look like a battle scene. So much blood. It's ridiculous. But the thing is, they are right. It's not as much blood as you think it is. But any sight of blood is like shocking. It makes you sit there and go, it just makes you think, you're how can this be happening? Yeah, it is shocking. But yeah, mental health wise, when you are flaring, it's hard to be positive, to be honest. It is really hard. But the thing is, from my experience, it will always get better. There will be a point where it will start to lessen and go away. And if it doesn't, there's other means like surgeries and that. And I've spoken to a lot of people where, they're much happier after the surgery. But in my experience, if you are flaring right now, just know that, perhaps in 3 or 4 months, it won't be like this. This is just what it is like right now. It won't be like this forever. And if it feels like it's going to be like that forever, then you just haven't reached that point yet. Like, it will come. Yeah. See, it is tough. I won't lie. Dealing with, like, knowing, like, I've got to go to the bathroom again. I've got to run to the bathroom and it's going to be horrible. The best approach I've found is just accepting it, just living in that state, just being like, okay, this is how things are. I'm going to go, I'm going to know I'm going to see blood. I'm just going to roll with it. That's the best way. And focusing on the things that you can do during the flare to make you feel better, like making things easier for yourself. Like if you work from home, it's ideal to work from home if you've got this going on. But I know that's probably not an option for a lot of you. But if you do, or even, for the times you are at home, just like set things up for yourself. So when you do feel like rubbish, it's not going to be like this big effort to do something. So say even like little things, like say I need to plug something in at the back of my computer and that means getting on the floor. I just bought an extension cable so it's on my desk. That's a really small alleviation of some pain. The way you can alleviate as much of your pain as possible, like say you're like, I don't know what to eat. I'm so confused about what to eat. What the hell do you eat when you're flaring? Just eat plain. Just because this is something my specialist said to me. When you are flaring, no matter what you eat, it's going to feel horrible on the way out. So it's, when you are deep in a flare, it's almost like it doesn't matter what you eat. So the approach I went with was just eat plain. So one thing I like to have, diet's different for everyone. So what I'm about to say might not work for you, but what I had was Ready Brek, which is milled oats, and they've added vitamins, and I put peanut butter in there, and that was it. And I pretty much lived off of that. And I chose Ready Brek because it is supplemented with all these vitamins. Hydration, drink water, put salts in it, do more of that. In fact, I'm going to have some water right now. Make sure you do put salts in it because you will be going to the bathroom so much, it just keeps you dehydrated. You see, I've got a big bottle of water. Get a big bottle of water and carry it around with you everywhere. But nutrition is its whole other thing. And this is where products like Huel have really helped me, actually. Not sponsored by Huel, but I have used it pretty much throughout my whole diagnosis because it's a drink filled with vitamins. And if you're flaring, you need that stuff because you're not probably absorbing most of the vitamins. So having this flood of vitamins every time, it does help. It does help keep you afloat and have the energy to keep going. So I really rate meal replacement products. And there's so many diets you could try, but like to try and get out of a flare. I'll be honest, none of them have worked for me. The main thing that's worked for me is just using medications. I know it's sad and all, but that's what's worked for me. The medications are there to get you out of the flare. But this sort of plays into the mental health aspect because a lot of the time you're like, what future do I have? I've got this incurable disease. 2, I'm on these medications. How are they going to affect me long term? They all have like potential side effects. Mesalazine, when I first got on that, they're like, it could cause hair loss. Don't think that happened to me, but it could in the future. Hair loss, it could mess up your liver. They all sort of have that side effect. All sorts of things. So the best thing you can do, like mesalazine in particular, if you're on it, just drink lots of water. It's similar to ibuprofen. So the best way you can take it every day, you keep yourself hydrated. It reduces the chance of the damage that it could have. If you're dehydrated and you're taking this anti-inflammatory, supposedly that makes you more prone to the damage that it could cause. So just keeping hydrated will protect you from the damage of anti-inflammatories. But you have to take these things into account. And yeah, it does take a toll on your mental health. Like I said, before I was diagnosed, I thought I was dying of bowel cancer, so I was drinking. When I was diagnosed, it didn't really change how I felt, but I stopped drinking, that's for sure. But it does sort of make you feel numb. You're just like, how do I continue? How do I keep going? Or maybe you're not even asking yourself that. You're just like, why continue? Why keep going? And the best thing I can say is, like I said, it will get better, but it is tough. And some of the hardest times have been when I've been on the bathroom, on the toilet, and just going through that, it's like a trauma. It is a physical trauma going through a bowel movement. And it's almost like I began to come scared of going to the bathroom. And I try and hold it in for as long as possible because I just don't want to experience it. And that felt awful as well. So my advice for that, if you're in that state, is just go to the bathroom and just go through it, because it's better than holding it in. Like, it has to come out. All you're doing is delaying that pain. And just to describe what it feels like. So you're sitting there and it's almost like your gut pulls and it's like, push. You know, like when you push on the toilet, it's like an involuntary, like, everything's coming out now. And it feels dreadful because it's passing through these inflamed sites inside of your gut. Like, as things pass, it's like, it's horrible. Like, imagine you've got a wound here and you keep rubbing it. It hurts, right? It's sore. There's no option other than to rub it, like when you go to the bathroom. So it passes along all of these sore areas and then it comes out and it's like an ejection. It's like pressing the ejector seat button. Everything comes out. And then once it's all passed, it's like, oh, thank God, don't have to feel that. But it is like trauma. I'd have this physical response. I'd be sat here, my leg would be doing this, jolting up and down. And I'd be like, and I'd close my eyes. And then it would be like, everything ejects. You're like, brace for impact. Very much like that. And then sort of for like 10, 20 minutes afterwards, I'm sat downstairs after using the bathroom. I'm like, I just went through that. And you feel kind of messed up after that. I don't want to go through that again. And the thing is, it might be 20 minutes past and you're like, oh no, I've got to go back up there. It is horrible. I know I'm laughing, but it is horrible. But we got to keep things jovial when we're talking about these things. But that just plays into, you feel rubbish. You feel terrible because you're going through this cycle upwards of 20 plus times a day, going through this horrid trauma. And for me, it would always get worse at night time. I go to bed and then it'd be like, get to the bathroom now. Get to the bathroom now. So anyway, this is happening, like I said, on and off, 7 years, 8 years, however long. And it gets to the point where I have this, the big flare. So I've done a video where I talk about this specific point in time. But basically, I've been invited to a wedding in America. Well, actually, Canada. I've been invited to an overseas wedding. Booked the plane tickets. And I'd never really booked many holidays. So I found that very stressful. The whole ordeal happens. Booking a holiday. So, yeah, that's happened. I've booked a holiday and I'm very stressed. Like the kind of stress where you're shaking. And I'm just like, damn, I feel terrible. And a week later, I start flaring. Like it just comes, like the blood, urgency, everything. So immediately, I think at this point I could phone the specialist. Or it might be through email again. I contact the specialist, my specialist nurse, and I'm like, this, it's really getting bad. I'm bleeding a lot. First thing they say is stool sample. Hate giving stool samples. Blood tests. I think that's how it started. And they're like, get on prednisolone. And I'm just like, oh no, I don't want to do this. I think it goes back and forth emails where I'm just saying how bad it is, how many times a day I'm going, how I'm feeling, my worries. I just this is where I really stress open communication with your specialist nurse. I tell them everything because they want to know. They want to know if you've had any mucus, blood, how many times a day, what kind of stool is like. I just tell them everything. And I can't stress how useful it is to just be open about it, especially with your nurse. Because, the way I think is the more you share with them, just tell them the whole story. And then they can decide exactly what to do based off of that. And they can only decide based off the information you give them. So if you hide something, they might make the wrong decision for you. So that's why I am like open communication at all times. And I tell them everything and they're like, okay, get on these steroids. And I give in. I'm like, okay, it's been years and years since, since the start when I was first diagnosed. Like it's been like 7 or 8 years since I last tried prednisolone. I'm like, okay, finally reached a point where I have to take it. So I start taking the pills. There's 8 pills. And it completely ruins my sleep. I can't sleep I take these steroids. They tell you take it first thing in the morning, gets to nighttime, can't sleep because my stress levels are so high. Like I am already stressed. So I've got a lot of cortisol in my system. And then it brings it up to here. Say this is 10. It brings it up to 11. I can't sleep. I'm on the steroids. I'm not getting any sleep. And I tell them, I'm like, I can't sleep on these pills. I email them, like, I've been up all night. I maybe got 30 minutes of sleep. I can't take this. And day by day, my mental health is just degrading because I'm not getting any sleep. Feeling awful. Nothing's going on. And another thing is most of the nurses that work at the hospital, they're off sick. They're understaffed. So I'm getting communication like once a day through the email. And I'm like sat at the email, like just waiting. Like I just want a response. And it might get to the point where I'm panicking. In fact, I just need to wind it back a little bit. Before this even happened, before I managed to get in contact with the specialist, because they're quite delayed in the communication, I actually ring the non-emergency line, which is 111 here in the UK. Because I'm in this just state of panic where it gets to the point where I'm like, I'm bleeding this much, going to the bathroom this much, nothing's working. I think I wasn't sleeping. This was before I was on prednisolone because I'm just stressed. I'm very upset. I don't know what's going on. I think, this is it. I'm going to have surgery. And I'm panicking. I'm freaking out. And every time I've been in this state and I can't get through to specialists because you can only email them, you can only contact them in the morning. And I swear health problems always happen at night time, so you can't contact anyone. That's the way it works for me. It's not like you wake up first thing in the morning, you're like, I've got this health problem, I'll call the doctor. No, it happens at night time when you can't call the bloody doctor. So I'm in a total state of panic. So I called a non-emergency line and they allow me to see a doctor at the A&E. And basically the doctor's like, I don't know how to deal with this. And I remember the doctor saying, I can give you prednisolone, but I suggest that you wait to hear back from your specialist. Because I'm like literally saying to that doctor, I'm like, I've sent them an email. I have to wait for their email. And the doctor says, wait till the morning for the communication. That's what this doctor advised because she's like, I'm not an IBD specialist. I don't know how to treat it, but I can offer you prednisolone. And I'm just like, okay, I think I will wait for my communication from the specialist. Lo and behold, they end up putting me on prednisolone anyway. So I could have gotten that medication sooner. Wow, I'm getting heated up here. So anyway, fast forward back to where I was. They put me on prednisolone. I can't sleep, all that jazz. Flares not subsiding whatsoever. Now the thing is, my sleep gets so bad. This is where I start getting into actions that still affect me to this day. I'm like seeking out, I'm on all the IBD Discords, Reddits, forums. I'm like, how do I sleep? How do I sleep? People start suggesting me things. They're like, take magnesium biglycinate. This is where my whole sleep journey starts. Because I'm in a state of panic for sleep. I'm like, all I want in life is sleep. Magnesium biglycinate. I start taking that. No help, but I still take it. I still take it daily, years later. Because it's like, oh, it might help with my sleep. So yeah, I start taking magnesium biglycinate. Then they're like melatonin. So I get melatonin. I still bloody take that every day. And then I'm like, that's not working. So then I go down to the pharmacy. I'm like, help me. I need sleep. And they're like, okay, here's some diphenhydramine, Nitol. You can get that behind the counter. Got its own list of side effects. I start taking that. And finally, I get some sleep. 4 hours. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but that 4 to 5 hours that these pills gave me just sorted my head out. It allowed me to actually feel rested. Because before that, I was on no sleep whatsoever. Oh my God. That was such a relief. Being able to get 4 to 5 hours of sleep. The biggest relief of the whole journey so far. Because those steroids, they ruin my sleep so bad. So anyway, I'm in this slow communication with my specialist over email. And she's basically saying, hold in there. The team comes back on Monday, whenever this was. We will get together, have a group discussion and decide what you need to do. And I think at the time I'd lost, about 10 kilos of body weight. I mean, I was like 82 kilos. And then I'd gone down to 70, I think 74 or 73. I think that's about where I was. And I looked ripped. Like, I looked great. Like, that's the annoying thing. When I looked in the mirror, I was like, wow. Like, I look like a fighter or something. I look amazing. But I feel like crap. Like, I feel terrible. But I looked great. So I did get some pictures while I looked like that. But this ended up being the night before I was going in for a stay at a hospital. So what happened was I get an email, or they might have even phoned me the next day. Yeah, they did phone me and they're like, Jake, you need to admit yourself to hospital. We've decided as a team, you need to go to hospital. And I'm like, okay, never been admitted to hospital. And they're like, go to the AAU. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's not the emergency. It's not the A&E, accident emergency. It's like that. You go in and you could admit yourself. So I'm like, okay then. That's it. I'm going to hospital. Luckily, I just bought a laptop before this. So I packed my laptop, I packed some things, and I'm like, I guess I'm going to hospital. And I go to the AAU, and there's just all these beds and stuff, and I am there I think I wait for like 5 hours before anyone talks to me. And then finally someone's like, oh, okay, yeah, we've heard you're coming. And it's the first time I've had a cannula, actually. They put a cannula in my arm, and they withdraw blood from it to start with. But I soon discovered that this is staying in my arm, like for a while. And they take some blood straight away, and then the cannula's just there. And I'm just another set of hours go by, and they're like, right, we've got a bed for you. I'm like, okay. So I'll go to this bed, and the first thing they do is attach an IV of, I think, just hydration salts. It's like an 8-hour IV. And I'm like, okay, I'm in this bed now. I'm in hospital. It's weird. And there's some girl I can hear next to me, like arguing. Like, I think she was held there under some mental health thing. But she was like, I'm leaving. And this was my first experience in the hospital. I've got this woman kicking off next to me, saying she hates it here. She's leaving. And I can just hear them talking about, like, I think she'd been sectioned or something, was told to stay there. But at this time, she was allowed to bail, and she decided to quit. There's a man opposite me who, looks not in very well health. And I'm just there, lying in a bed. More hours go by. And then suddenly someone comes up to me and was like, right, you're going to your ward now. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know what's going on. I thought I was in the ward. I thought this was where I was staying. But they're like, no, you're going to this ward. It's a specialist gastro ward. I'm like, okay then. And they wheel the bed. I'm literally just lying in the bed and they're wheeling it, which is a funny experience. And then I think this was at like midnight or something. I'm wheeled into the ward and everyone's asleep. And I'm just like, okay, I'm here now. I'm in hospital on a ward. It's very quiet, sort of quiet anyway. And I don't end up sleeping because I'm like, it's a whole new environment. I'm just suddenly in hospital. But that's where my hospital journey began. I was just in bed. I'm told, you need to start tracking your bowel movements, how many times you go, what it looks like. And I've been given this chart, and basically seven's the worst. And I recorded a lot of sevens. Pretty much every time was a 7. But this was my home for however long I was going to be there for. And yeah, when I was there, you get like a menu. In the hospital I was in anyway, you get to pick like what do you want for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. Whenever I wanted something to drink, I'd sort of just try and get someone's attention. I could get a hot drink whenever I like. In a lot of ways, it was quite nice, actually. I never accepted a bed bath, I'll say that. I think I only showered there twice because I just didn't want to use their facilities. But yeah, it's not like it was a bad place. The worst part was I just continued to not get any sleep because there's just all this noise going on, this racket. You hear all these people like next to you groaning in pain. Man over there looking horrible. Not horrible, I just mean like in a bad state, making noises. People, there was one guy, I think he had dementia and he kept just like yelling and talking to himself and he just would not be quiet. I think I ended up getting sick of that man, actually. Just like constant blabbering. Do you know what got me through that? My laptop. Because what I was able to do was I at the time I typed dub techno on YouTube and I just put my earplugs in and I just listened to dub techno to drown out the noise of the man talking nonsense and the groaning and what else got me through was actually playing World of Warcraft with my guild. I've been playing World of Warcraft quite regularly. Basically, they re-released the original World of Warcraft in 2019. I've been playing that with the same guild. And at the time I was in the hospital, TBC had come out, which was basically the first expansion for World of Warcraft. And I ended up raiding from the hospital bed. So that was one of my favourite experiences being in hospital. Raiding from the hospital bed. It's just funny. I'm on Discord and I'm hearing my guild mates and that's sort of making me feel at home. And I'm in hospital. That was one of the most like heartwarming experiences when I was in hospital. Being able to raid and hospital. It's just kind of funny. But yeah, so anyway, throughout my time in hospital, like I said, I'm recording my bowel movements. And let's say it's been 5 days and I've got my chart and I remember the healthcare assistant coming over to have a look and they're like, I've been writing 7, the worst. And they're like, still 7? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. It is still a 7. Like, I'm not getting any better. So basically what happens was my consultant comes to see me and he's like in the hierarchy, he's like the boss. He's the one who signs off all the medications. I've seen his name on all my prescriptions and medications that I've ever had, but I've never met him. And then he's there and he's like, basically just talks to me, explains what they're going to do. He's going to like touch my belly to see if there's any pressure. He had very nice soft hands and he's like doing this. And he's like, any pain? I'm like, no, that's okay. So there's no sign of perforation or anything. That's something I'm quite terrified of. That's when your bowel, like say this is your bowel, a hole appears. I've heard stories of people going through that. It's like being shot, apparently. So luckily that didn't happen. So anyway, he's like, basically, what we're going to do is we're going to offer you biological medication. And you can choose which one you like. And he sits down with me and he says, these are your options. And he writes all the medications and, the potential side effects. And if this doesn't work, you could try this. It's like a sort of roadmap. If this doesn't work, you've got this, this, and this, like 3 other options. And if they don't work, then that leads to maybe you can have surgery to remove that part of the bowel, have a bag. I'm like, okay. But so basically, I heard the name Infliximab, and the thing is, I decided to go with that one purely because I've heard other people being on it. I was just like, I've heard other people's experiences. I'll go with that one. So that's the decision I made. I chose I chose what to do. And he was like, okay, we're going to start putting that in process. We'll get you on infliximab. So I've decided this is set in motion now. And my decision there has led to where I am now, to be honest. So, yeah, I just decided to go along with what I'd heard good things about, infliximab. Now, the thing is, you're supposed to get these pretty quickly. He called it, I can't remember what it's called. It's like an emergency. Basically, it's like, let's get this guy a dose now. I think he called it rescue medication. That was it. So infliximab was going to rescue me. He's going to rescue me out of this flare. And it was like a bit, you have to build up a dose of it until it starts doing its thing. But he's like, we've got to get you this rescue medication. We'll get it to you as soon as possible. Supposedly, I was supposed to have it the next day. But it ends up being days. And they put me on this thing called Clexane, which is like to stop me from having blood clots. That was horrible because they like pinch here and then they inject it in there, subcutaneous, like bang. And it's like, it's just a little pinch. It's not so bad, really, but it feels horrible. I hated being on that. I had that every day. Pretty much every day I was there. So anyway, I'm just waiting, really. I'm supposed to wait for someone from pharmacy to come down and give me infliximab. And basically it just doesn't happen. And I'm there. I think one day I'm just like, please, I can't sleep. As usual, I can't sleep. What can I do? And they give me, I don't know what it was. It was a sleeping pill. And I asked the nurse, I said, what is this drug that you're giving me? And she's like, oh, it's a controlled substance. So you have to take it. And I'm like, okay, but I just want to know what it is. And she was like, well, it's a sleeping pill. And I'm just like, I just want to know what it is. She doesn't tell me because she actually thinks I'm going to take it home and sell it or something. So I put it to one side because I'm going to take it for sleep. And then I take it later that night. And she comes round and she's like, have you taken it yet? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, good. I was like, this is really weirdly judgmental from this nurse. I just was very confused. I don't know why. But anyway, one thing I forgot to mention was the whole time I'm in hospital, they've taken me off of prednisolone, which is the oral steroid, and put me on an IV one. So I'd have 4 doses of this hydrocortisone, and they inject it through the cannula, which was here. And it felt like it was like air conditioning into my vein. And I was on that the whole time that I was in hospital. And that was just couldn't sleep when I was on that. And I found that I started retaining water, particularly in my knees, because I often like to sit like this. And I found that even bending my leg started to hurt. And I don't know the reason why, but my theory was I was retaining water here and it was just causing this pressure. So I was losing my mobility, which was dreadful. And I'd go for I try and remain as active as I could. So I'd walk around the hospital and I'd sort of walk around at like an old granddad pace, like shuffling around, because that's all I could manage, to be honest. But I'd still walk around the hospital. And that was one of the nice things, actually, walking around the hospital at night time. It's like, the hallways are quiet. And I did enjoy that. So I'm walking around the hospital, just trying to enjoy my time there, because it's a weird experience. So finally, I get the infliximab. And I tell you what, I swear to you, within like 4 hours of having my first IV of infliximab, I noticed changes. And that sounds ridiculously fast, but I go to the bathroom and things have started changing. I just noticed within 4 hours, I was like, the stool was more formed. Yes, it was still bloody, but I was like, this is rapid. Like, I didn't feel like I had to. It didn't feel like it was an ejection anymore. It felt like it felt like it was healing. And so, yeah, very rapidly, I'm like, this is working. And they're like, okay, so they monitor my inflammation levels in my blood. And they're like, if you reach this level, you can go home. And I'm like, okay. And my inflammation levels are slowly coming down. And it got to a point when there was enough for me to go. So to start with, what they did was they took me off the hydrocortisone. They're like, right, so you're going to go back on oral prednisolone, and we're going to give you this tapering plan. So you're going to have 8 pills for a week or 2 weeks or however long it was. Then you go down to 7 pills, then 6, then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 until you're off of it. Because supposedly, apparently, you have to taper off of corticosteroids, otherwise bad things happen. But the thing is, I'd had my first dose of hydrocortisone in the morning, and then like, okay, don't take any more because you're going to have orals tomorrow. And then I go to sleep that night, and I think I had like this withdrawal effect, and I have the most visceral nightmares, like the worst nightmares I've ever experienced. And they were horrible nightmares. I don't even want to describe what happened, but I remember the healthcare system woke me up in the morning, and I opened my eyes, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. I'm not in that nightmare anymore. And I was just so happy to be awake. And I was just like, that's when I learned. I was like, that's why you don't just come off of steroids, because otherwise that happens. And I was like actually kind of upset. I was like, they should have given me the rest of the dose that day, because then I wouldn't have felt so bad. Anyway, my levels continue to fall, and I'm able to leave hospital. And that was weird. My girlfriend, well, fiance now, but girlfriend at the time, picks me up and drives home. She's really happy to see me. It feels so strange to be leaving the hospital. But I remember distinctly, we're driving home, and you go over a speed bump, and it would be like, and I was like, please, like, go over the speed bumps very slowly. So we almost went at a crawl pace over the speed bumps. But I'm finally home. And by the way, I got COVID. Got COVID when I was in the hospital. But somehow it didn't really affect me. I had one night where I couldn't breathe very well. But after that one night, I didn't even really feel like I had anything other than fatigue. So anyway, I'm home now. And I kid you not, the day after I get home, I'm like, I got to get back on my fitness. And I deadlift. And I deadlift 100 kilos. And I was very, very happy with that. And I was a video of me doing it. I've got my mask on still because I've got COVID. I'm wearing my mask at home, deadlifting. I'm just like so happy to be lifting again. And yeah, I'm home again. So I haven't had to go back, luckily, yet. Touch wood. Thank God I haven't got to go back. But the thing is, I've spent so much time sleep deprived, I can't say that word, that my fatigue levels are just insanely high. And we actually end up going on a family holiday to Center Park. So it's like this place you go to, it's nature, you can cycle around. The idea is no one has their cars during the holiday, so you can only cycle around this place. It's very nice. But it was weird because my fatigue levels were so high. We do something for like an hour, and I'd be like, I've got to go. And I'd go to bed, and I'd have to nap. And I'm not the kind of person that has naps. So that was very peculiar for me. And it just took months for that fatigue to go away. And by the way, this whole time, I'm still taking the diphenhydramine to sleep. Because I'm still on a high dose of the steroids. I can't sleep. And eventually, I taper off of the prednisolone. But I'm so sort of disturbed by the lack of sleep that I continue taking the diphenhydramine, the Nitol/Benadryl, if that's where in the US it's Benadryl. I'm still taking that because I'm just like, I want to sleep tonight. And it becomes a mental thing. I'm like, I don't want to have this bad sleep. I've been through this whole like trauma of no sleep. I never want to go through that again. So I just keep taking it. It takes me 6 months to actually get the balls to quit it. And I take it daily for 6 months. And the way that I did it was in the same way that I came off of the steroids. So I tapered. I was taking, I think it was 50 milligrams. So I went down to 25. Didn't really notice the difference between 50 and 25. And then I'd get a knife and I'd cut a bit of the pill off. And then over time, I was taking like such a small amount. It was just a mental thing. Just taking that small bit of pill was like, mentally, I was like, okay, I can go to sleep now. And basically from here on in, I have to go to an infusion unit, which is a couple of towns over. And every 8 weeks I go and they give me infliximab. And that's pretty much how I get treated to this day. So on top of that, I've also been told to take azathioprine, which is another immunosuppressant. So the biological drug infliximab is an immunosuppressant in itself. And, it's supposed to stop me attacking myself. And the azathioprine is taken in conjunction with that. And the theory is, over time, your body might build antibodies to the infliximab. So, say, for instance, I get infliximab. I always point to my arm because that's where it goes in. And over time, my body would be able to delete it, basically. Be like, we don't want this. Get rid of the infliximab. So the idea with the azathioprine is I take that and it stops my body from having the chance to build antibodies to the infliximab. And the idea is so it retains the effectiveness of the infliximab for as long as possible. So I'm still currently on those two medications. I take infliximab every 8 weeks, and every day I take 100 milligrams of azathioprine. Now, initially, I was actually told to take 150, and that's 3 pills. And I started taking the pills. So you ramp up. You start from 1 pill, 2 pills, and then I went to 3 pills. When I started taking 3 pills, I noticed that I was just feeling sort of like sick all the time, nauseous. So I emailed my specialist, and I said, I'm just going to take 100. I made like the executive decision. I was like, I'm taking 100 because 150 is making me feel sick. And as soon as I went down to 2 pills, I stopped feeling sick. And they were actually okay with that. They were like, okay, you do that. So that's what I've been taking the whole time. And since then, since this whole hospital debacle, like I said, I go get my 8-week infusion a couple of towns over. But the week before, I have to book a blood test. So every 8 weeks, I'm also having a blood test, but it's the week prior to the infusion. And that's just so that nurses and the doctors can look at my blood levels and think, is there anything rising that shouldn't be rising? Is anything abnormal? That sort of thing. But the thing is, I get all of that information sent to my phone because the NHS have this app where you can check, what your blood levels are currently. So I look at it and see, this is out of range. So, for instance, my creatinine levels, that's out of range. And then I freak out because I'm like, how do I reduce it? And what do I do here? And I remember I get in contact with my specialist nurse. I'm like, my creatinine's high. This other thing's high. How do I reduce them? And she's like, I don't know. Let's Google it. And I'm just like, I wish I could talk to a blood specialist about it. But since then, I found out, because I'm an avid weightlifter, I like training in the gym, that when you train hard in the gym, now I just want to make a point here, I don't take creatine and I never have before anyone asks. So when you train hard in the gym, when your muscles are repairing themselves, apparently creatinine is expelled in that process. And this is like my most recent blood test. About a couple of weeks before, I do a lot of deadlift. And then I get the blood test and my creatinine levels are very high. And then I start thinking, I feel like this is linked. And when I Googled it, supposedly it is linked. So that's very interesting. So this is just like, it's probably quite niche. There's probably not too many people out there in the same situation. But if you find that your creatinine levels are high and you do weightlifting, just consider how hard you trained before that blood test. This is something I'm going to keep my eye on going forward. How hard can I train and how much does that affect my creatinine levels? And I want to have a blood test where I actually rest, don't train, see if it drops. But consistently, my creatinine levels are always high. They're always out of range consistently, but I am consistently lifting weights. But it was this one time where I did that very, very hard set of deadlifts, and my creatinine levels were the highest I've ever seen them. That's when I started thinking, is there a link here? And I think there is, but I still need to test it. So that actually reminds me, the whole time I've had ulcerative colitis, I've been lifting weights pretty much. And even going back to those times when I mentioned I'm out of the skateboarding, and then I'm flaring, deadlifting is what got me through it. There were times where I felt rubbish, I felt low, and I'm just there like I can't continue. But I go outside and I lift some weights, and it sort of gives me what I like to call man juice feeling. Like I lift the weights, it starts burning, and then I'm just like, my man juices have elevated and I feel good. And that's sort of mentally what got me through a lot of those tough times, was actually deadlifting. And I don't know how many people out there would want to deadlift when they're flaring, but I tell you what, if you do it, it does make you feel better. There's something about weightlifting when you feel like rubbish that just elevates you. But since coming out of hospital and being on these medications, I've taken my sleep as a priority. I've exercised as a priority, done everything I can to supplement the things that could help with inflammation, and just tried to live a life that minimizes the impact of me flaring again. Now, my throat's getting very dry. Let's talk about supplementation. Supplements that I like to take, vitamin D is like the top one, and I like to take that with vitamin K2. There is a reason behind it. When you take high levels of vitamin D, the vitamin D promotes the production of calcium, and that calcium can be taken to the wrong place. Apparently, vitamin K2 directs that calcium into the correct places. So if you ever want to take high doses of vitamin D, be sure to take high doses of vitamin K2 at the same time, just to make sure that calcium goes to the right place. So I take 10,000 international units of vitamin D every day, and I've got blood test results showing my levels. I never got to the toxicity range, which is quite hard to get to. They are higher. My vitamin D levels are higher than the average person because I've been supplementing it every day for a really long time. And I really suggest you try this, especially if you live in a country like the UK where most of the time it's cloudy, it's not really sunny. Year round, you're probably deficient in vitamin D. This is advice to pretty much most people anyway. You should be supplementing vitamin D, but in particular, if you have a chronic disease like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. My specialist said to me, once I had my first ever vitamin D blood test, she said if everyone had levels this high, we would probably have less hospital visits, less instances of severe flares, because there's something about having a high vitamin D level and your immune system working in a more functioning manner. There is a link there. So if you're not taking vitamin D, you should take vitamin D, but especially if you have a chronic illness. Another thing I like to take is magnesium biglycinate. So supposedly that helps you sleep at night, but I just take it because it's an essential electrolyte as well. That also gets tracked on my blood tests, and I can see my magnesium levels are higher because I supplement it every day, but they're not out of range. Another thing I like to take is omega-3s. So there's supposedly a link between inflammation and having high levels of omega-6s without having omega-3s in your diet. So I take omega-3s, and there was something about you wanted to get DHA versions of omega-3s. So I take that every day, and I think it's working. I'm doing all these things in conjunction with each other. I also, this is a weird one, I take garlic supplements. So garlic is a little bit of a blood thinner. So if you are bleeding and flaring, I wouldn't suggest taking it, but it could reduce your chances of blood clots, all that sort of stuff, increase your blood flow. Another thing that I take is lion's mane mushrooms. Now, this is more for like a mental capacity sort of thing. It supposedly has the chance of helping you create new brain cells. I'm not going to say that there's any proof of that because I don't know, but I take it. So that's just what I do. I think I've been taking it for about 6 or 7 months. At first, I did notice large effects on my sleep. I think it makes me dream deeper. I do feel like it has an effect of that. So it might make my sleep more valuable. Again, it's a maybe, like maybe doing all these things together make me feel better, but I can't pinpoint it down to any one thing in particular. And that's about it for supplementation, other than melatonin. So you're not really supposed to take melatonin for an extended period of time, but I'll be honest, I've been taking it for a long time. And it is purely because of what, that period of bad sleep. It's the last sort of holdover that I really should deal with and reduce. And I do have a tapering plan. I just haven't initiated it yet. But I've been taking melatonin for a really long time. So anyway, you can say what you want about that. That's just what I've done. And I'll be honest, I have some of the best sleep now that I've ever had. I don't pin it all down to the melatonin because I've implemented a sort of sleep hygiene regimen. And I do say regimen strongly because there's a whole laundry list of things that I do for my sleep. And I think all of it in conjunction has given me the best sleep I've ever had. Might as well get into that just quickly. I have a fan on at night to generate some sort of white noise. I use earplugs to stop excessive noise from waking me up. I put a t-shirt over my head, not an eye mask. So it's essentially an eye mask, but my t-shirt does the job. Like I said, I take the melatonin. I go to sleep at the same time every day, wake up at the same time pretty much every day. I also drink lemon balm tea, which promotes the production of GABA, which can help you relax. I've also used CBD oil, which helps you feel chill. And I exercise. All of these things together has helped me sleep. And I believe you got to take all of these approaches to get good sleep, because I found since I've been really working on my sleep, I feel a lot better and I get a lot more done. And this is all stuff I learned from having such bad sleep in the hospital. So it's a gift in a way. I learned that. And I really want to tell you that how important sleep is. It's something you really should be working on. If you have bad sleep, my God, that could increase your risk of flaring, your inflammation levels, your stress levels. Everything can be worse because you're not getting good sleep. So I really urge you to work on that. And yeah, like I said, exercising. I try and go to do some weightlifting at least twice a week. Lately, I've been doing running as well, cardio, diet. This is very individual, but for me, I have mentioned earlier in the video, I like to have Huel. Not so much when I'm healthy. I do have it occasionally, but I like to just eat foods that have less ingredients. I have a lot of kefir, so that's got bacteria in it that's good for your gut, supposedly. I eat berries, I eat meats, peanut butter, all of those sort of things, and I try and keep it as clean, as simple as possible. And just all of these things, I'm trying to hedge my bets into doing these things will mean I'll live longer, hopefully, feel healthier, and be able to do the things that I want to do. So you don't have to let bowel disease hold you back, basically. Just try it, but you do need to work on your health. Because if you're in this flare state, I'm not saying that, I'm not criticizing anyone here, but you're probably doing some things that are making you feel worse or unhealthy. It could be as simple as like letting your stress levels get too high. For instance, when I go look back, like I mentioned with the skateboarding era, let myself get into this angry state, and then that would release cortisol in my body, and that would lead to inflammation arising inside of me. And I'm not saying these things will cause you to flare or stop you flaring if you manage it, but it's going to make you more likely to be healthy. So it's good to look back at how you've behaved, the actions that you take and the things that you do, and just think about what impact is that having on yourself. So like I said, the anger was leading to inflammation. Before that, it was the bad diet and the drinking that led to inflammation. Lack of sleep, stress, inflammation. Just think about it like that. What can you do opposite wise? So it'd be relax, be more calm, less inflammation. Eat a diet that isn't working against you, less inflammation. Work on your sleep, feel more recovered, more relaxed, less stressed, less inflammation. Do you see what I'm saying here? So if you are flaring, I know it sucks. I know you feel like rubbish, but just use this as an opportunity to take account for what is going on in your life. Think about what decisions have you made that may have impacted your health recently, or even in the past 6 months. What things have you been doing that might be bad habits? And what things can you do to fix that? And it's really just take account for what you're doing to yourself. And I think you got to take this whole, I'll call it a holistic approach to everything to guide you towards a life of health. And that might even be emotionally, like sharing with others. How do you feel? Do you bottle everything up inside of you, hence causing stress, leading to inflammation? This is the things that I seriously think is worth considering when you're in that flare state. And even when you're not in that flare state, take account, what are you doing now? Is there some things that you could be working on better? I just think this is very, very important things to be looking at here. So I've got a list of questions here on my laptop. I'm just going to check that I've gone through everything that I've wanted to talk about today, because I've talked about a lot. I wanted to give you sort of the full picture of my life with ulcerative colitis, the deepest, fullest look into what it's like living with an inflammatory bowel disease, because I haven't seen anyone else do this, share everything, get it all out on the table, tell you exactly what it's like, sharing all the details. I think I've covered everything, to be honest. I've covered everything. So let's just see what things I haven't talked about. How do I envision my future? Worries for the future. That's a tough one as well, to be honest, because this comes into, I'd like to come off the medications at some point. Because long term, infliximab could damage my internal organs. And I remember my specialist saying, we like to keep it to being on infliximab for a maximum of 5 years. I think I'm about halfway through that now. Goes quickly, does. What do I do upon that time elapsing? Do I try different medications? I can continue using infliximab if it's working. Do I even want to? That's the thing, I don't know. My future is uncertain. And that's why I like to implement as many health strategies as possible now to try and ensure my future health. But, the medications have their own impacts. So, yeah, it's a tough one, that. But it's a consideration we all need to take when we're on medications. The way I like to see medications is, if you are flaring really bad, you hear a lot of people talk about natural medications. They're not going to get you out of a flare. Let's just be honest. If you're in a deep flare, you're going to have to use the medications to get out of that flare. And I think once you've got out of the flare, then you can consider your options. What can we do from here? But really, from my experience, if you're in a deep, bad flare, use the medication to get out of that flare as fast as possible, because you don't want to stay in that. One of the dark results of colitis could be bowel cancer, and we want to mitigate that option as much as possible. So do you really want to stay in a flare that's more likely to cause you cancer than the medications? Staying in a prolonged flare, that is not where we want to be. So use the medications to get out of it. And then you kind of have the freedom to consider, where do I go from here? I mean, one option is I could try coming off the meds and just seeing what happens, but my specialist is certain I would flare within 6 months. Sounds like a challenge, doesn't it? Not sure if I want to put that to the test yet. But that's where I am with my journey at the minute, and that's where I'm looking in my future horizon, is how do I come off of medications? Not sure yet. It's all a lot of mindset shifting. That's where I'm quite interested in. I'm quite interested in psilocybin, actually, to try and see if I can shift my mindset, expand my thoughts on it, see if something shifts. That's something I might try in the future. I've been doing so much talking, my throat's getting sore. If you have enjoyed this video, then please subscribe. If you made it to this far, I doubt many of you made it this far, but if you have, you are a real G. You know, thank you so much for listening to me talk about all of this stuff. And as a reward for making it all the way through my video, I'm very excited to share with you a PDF that I've been working on, and that's in the description below. If you click that, it will be pinged across your email, and it's a document that I've been working on that will list how you can get started improving your health today. And I'd love it if you could check that out. And if there's anything that you think is missing from that PDF or you'd like me to talk about, please do tell me, because I want to make valuable resources for you that will really help you tangibly in your life with chronic disease. So thank you so much. Thank you. Goodbye.